The Lafayette Police Department is currently investigating the death of an 18-year-old girl, Gabriella Sharp. On Friday morning around 3:40 a.m., officers were dispatched to a convenience store off of West Congress Street to a report of an unresponsive female. Officers and paramedics attempted life-saving measures but were unsuccessful. Sharp was pronounced dead at the scene.
It was just after 3:30 in the morning, the kind of hour where the world feels paused, streetlights flickering, roads nearly empty, and every sound echoing louder than it should. At a convenience store on West Congress Street in Lafayette, Louisiana, first responders rushed to the scene. Someone had called for help. Someone was in trouble. Inside, they found an 18-year-old girl, unresponsive. Her name was Gabriella Sharp, a daughter, a student, a friend, a young woman with her whole life ahead of her. But in those early morning hours, something had gone terribly wrong. Within days, 2 young men would be arrested, not for causing her death, but for actions surrounding the hours before it. And as the investigation unfolded, it revealed something far more unsettling than a single moment. It revealed a breach of trust, a night where decisions, pressures, and intentions collided, a situation that left a community grieving, asking questions, and looking for answers that still aren't fully clear. Because the tragedy of this story isn't just how Gabriella's life ended. It's who she was with, where she thought she was safe, and how quickly safety can become something else. This is Crime Bitz, and today we're telling Gabriella's story. Take a breath. We're going into this together. Before we talk about investigations, timelines, or charges, we need to talk about Gabriella. Not as a case, but as a person. Because Gabriella Sharp was more than the headline that people saw online. More than the rumors. More than the tragedy. She was 18, standing at the doorway of adulthood, caught between who she had been and all she was about to become. Gabriella was a senior at Acadiana High School. She was close to graduating, close to choosing her next chapter. College, work, independence, new experiences, everything that young adulthood promises. Those who knew her describe her as gentle, a calm presence, the kind of person who didn't need to speak loudly to be heard. She had a quiet laugh, the kind that made other people smile without realizing they were smiling. And she didn't chase attention. Attention found her on its own. She loved music. She loved being around friends she trusted. Late night talks, long car rides, moments where the world felt simple and safe. And she was someone who trusted easily, not carelessly, but with the hope that others were as kind as she was. Friends say she cared deeply, not in a dramatic or overwhelming way, but in the small, consistent ways that matter the most. Checking in, remembering details, showing up, staying present. She didn't try to be perfect. She didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. She was just herself, and that was enough. And that's what makes this story so heartbreaking. Because Gabriella wasn't in a dangerous situation with strangers. She wasn't walking down a dark alley or surrounded by people who meant her harm. She was around people she knew, people she believed she could trust. And when a kind heart meets the wrong intentions, the consequences can be devastating. In the hours before Gabriella was found at that convenience store, she wasn't alone. She had been with people she knew, not strangers, not faceless threats, but young men who were familiar, acquaintances, or even friends, depending on who you ask. And that's what makes this part difficult to hear. Because when danger comes from outside, we call it violence. But when danger comes from the inside, from within our circle, we call it betrayal. On that night, Gabriella was spending time with at least 2 young men. They were close enough to be around her, close enough to be in her space, close enough to be part of her final known hours. There is no confirmed report that she feared them, no message saying she was in danger, no clear sign, at least publicly, that she expected anything to go wrong. But red flags are not always loud. Sometimes they look like a boundary being pushed because it's just a joke. Someone recording things that should remain private. Peer pressure packaged as, just relax, you're good. A situation where one person holds more social power than another. The kind of red flags you only recognize after the damage has already been done. The investigation revealed allegations of sexual misconduct involving one of the young men. Another was charged with recording something without consent. Let that sit for a moment, because that tells us something important. Gabriella was not just with people who didn't protect her. She was with people who allegedly took advantage of her vulnerability. Not violently, not loudly, but quietly. And quiet harm can be the most dangerous kind. Because quiet harm is the kind that doesn't scream, doesn't alert others, doesn't leave obvious signs until it's too late. We don't yet know every detail of what happened inside those hours. The investigation is ongoing. The medical exam results are still being studied. But what we do know is this. Two people were close enough to Gabriella to see her in a vulnerable state, and instead of helping her, instead of protecting her, they are now facing charges for actions that crossed lines that should never be crossed. And that's where the heartbreak sharpens, because Gabriella didn't walk into danger. Danger walked in beside her.
The investigation is still ongoing, so at this point there are no charges pending because at this point it is not a homicide.
In the early hours of November 1st, the night took a turn that no one can fully describe. Not yet, not completely. And perhaps that's part of what makes this story so difficult. There are pieces we can see and pieces still hidden behind ongoing investigation and sealed reports. So we move carefully. We speak with respect, we speak with clarity, and we speak only to what is confirmed and what is alleged. At some point during the night, Gabriella became vulnerable. Whether due to exhaustion, environment, influence, or medical reaction, that part is still being examined. The cause of her unresponsiveness has not been officially determined. Toxicology reports are ongoing. Medical findings take time. But what is known is this: Gabriella was in a state where she could not protect herself. And during that time, actions were taken around her, and possibly involving her, that violated her trust, her dignity, and her right to safety. One of the individuals present that night, 18-year-old Caden Richard, was later arrested and charged with sexual battery. Another, 19-year-old Jaquan Pierre, was charged with video voyeurism. These charges tell a story without needing graphic detail. They tell us a boundary was crossed, something private was recorded, consent was not present, lines were violated in a way that turned a vulnerable moment into an exploited one. Not a misunderstanding, not a misread situation, not an accident. A choice. A choice to act when someone was not in a position to respond, a choice to continue instead of stop, a choice to take advantage rather than step up and protect. And while the cause of Gabriella's death has not been linked directly to these acts and is currently classified as medical-related pending full results, the hours around her passing are now surrounded by unanswered questions and legal consequences. There are still pieces missing. What exactly happened before she became unresponsive? Did anyone call for help immediately? Or did time pass first? Could someone have stepped in sooner? Was there hesitation? Was there fear? Or was there disregard? Only those who were present know the full truth. But the fact remains, when Gabriella needed care, what she received instead was violation. And in the quiet hours of that morning, with the city asleep and the world unaware of what was unfolding, her life slipped away. This is where the story shifts again. Because after the event, after the actions, after the moment passed, the investigation began. But the damage had already been done. Why? Why would someone exploit a person who was vulnerable? Why would someone record another human being without their consent? Why didn't anyone stop it? Why didn't someone help her sooner? These questions are not just about this case. They are questions about human behavior, power, and the way some people view intimacy, trust, and control. Because at the heart of this story is a choice, not a sudden act of rage, not a crime committed by strangers in the dark, but a decision made in the presence of someone who should have been respected, protected, and treated with care. And to understand that choice, we need to talk about something uncomfortable: the psychology of exploiting vulnerability. There are people, often young, often unchecked, often surrounded by peers who reinforce harmful behavior, who learn to see vulnerability not as something to protect, but as an opportunity. When someone is tired, under influence, emotionally overwhelmed, or simply trusting, a person with predatory tendencies sees a moment to act without resistance. Not always violently, not always with force, but with entitlement. This mindset shows up in patterns. If she's quiet, she won't say anything. If she doesn't fight back, it's fine. If no one finds out, does it really matter? Everyone does this. It's normal. This is not impulse. This is social conditioning. This is someone who has never been held accountable, someone who has mistaken access for permission, someone who has confused presence with consent. And then there is the recording. Recording without consent is not curiosity, it's power. When someone records another person in a private moment, especially when that person is not in a state to agree, the intention is almost always control, humiliation, possession, proof to show others, or to turn a person into something less than human. It's about saying, I have something of you that you can't take back. This turns a person into an object, a moment into a trophy, a human life into entertainment. And when that happens, empathy is gone. Because empathy is what stops a person and says, this is still a person. This is someone's child. This will affect them forever. But when empathy is missing, when accountability has never been learned, when peer pressure rewards harm instead of condemning it, we get nights like this one. Gabriella didn't meet evil in the dramatic sense. She met something much more common: immaturity mixed with power, entitlement mixed with opportunity, disregard mixed with silence. And silence is dangerous. Silence is how harm happens in rooms full of people. Silence is how trust turns into trauma. Silence is how victims lose their voices long before the world realizes something is wrong. And the hardest part, Gabriella trusted them. She didn't know she needed protection. She didn't know she was in danger. She didn't know that the people around her were capable of seeing her vulnerability as something to use instead of something to care for. And that is where the tragedy sharpens again, not just in what happened that night, but in what should have happened instead. Someone should have helped her. Someone should have stepped in. Someone should have said, no, this is wrong. But no one did. Gabriella's story asks us to look closer, not at the big dramatic moments, but at the small ones, the moments where respect is replaced with disregard, the moments where someone's humanity is treated as optional, the moments where silence allows harm to happen. And it asks something of us, to pay attention, to listen to instincts, not just our own, but our friends too, to step in when something feels wrong, even quietly, even gently, even if it feels uncomfortable. Because sometimes a single voice, one person saying, hey, no, that's not okay, is enough to change everything. Gabriella should still be here. She should still be laughing with her friends, graduating, growing, living. Her story is not just a tragedy to be told. It's a reminder. Trust is sacred. Vulnerability is not permission. And silence can be the most dangerous choice of all. May her memory be a light. May her story spark awareness, compassion, and courage. And may her name never be spoken without the love she deserved. This is Crime Bitz, where we remember the lives behind the headlines. If you value stories told with compassion, care, and dignity, like, subscribe, and share. For awareness, for justice, for her.